right, so the first couple of things that we did is like training. We really want to compete, but we can't compete until we've got the basics taken care of. And that's really what we did in those first couple of lectures. Learning about transcription, translation, post-translational modifications. Now we've got the basics, we've got the foundation on which we can build. And that's where we now start getting into the fun stuff. And what we're going to get into today is the acute response to resistance exercise. All right. So really what we're going to look at is this protein kinase complex called the mechanistic target of rapamycin. And it's specifically complex 1. And we'll get into that as we go. All right. So this short series of lectures is going to really focus on the acute phase and a little bit about what the stimulus is. But before we start, we're going to talk about our little word of the day today. Today, we're going to talk about this word nuance, and that's that there's a subtle difference in meaning or that there's not an absolute. So when we're going to talk about how important mTOR complex 1 is, we're going to make it seem like everything is all about mTOR complex 1. And the reality is that it's not everything. It's a significant part, but it's not everything. So we're going to go through that, and we're going to talk about the nuance in this. All right, so in this series of lectures that we call Lecture 3, by the end of them, you should be able to state the overload principle, which is basically a 2,000-year-old principle that is going to be important for making muscles grow bigger and stronger. You're going to be able to identify what it is that makes a muscle grow. You'll be able to state the exact number of sets that you need to do to get stronger. Oh, wow, it's magic. It's not magic at all. All right, it's the reality is that we get 95% of everything from the first things we do. As we do more and more of it, we get a big decrease in what we get back from every significant increase in effort that we put in. So the harder you work, the longer you work, you get this very flat curve at the top, where at the beginning, the first thing you do is a huge effect, then everything else has a very minor effect on top of that. Which if you're an elite athlete and you need 1 or 2%, that's going to be really important. But for most people like me who are training for life, we don't need to push for hours and hours and hours in the gym. We can get most of it all really quickly. At the end of these lectures, you'll be able to draw the relationship between the mechanistic target of rapamycin complex 1 activity and muscle gains. So what's the relationship? If I increase the activity of this kinase, what happens to my muscle gains? And you're also going to be able to compare and contrast the mTOR complex 1 and mTOR complex 2. And so that's really what we're going to focus on in these lectures. So I'm going to give you one last thing in this one, which is the overview lecture, and that's this simple thing called the overload principle. All right, this goes back over 2,000 years. Milo of Crotona, perfect example. So Milo was a farmer, but he was in the first Olympiad. He was the greatest athlete in the first Olympiad, way back when in the Olympic Games, way back in ancient times. And what he was is he was a farmer. And every 4 years, he would go and compete in the Olympics. And then after the Olympics, he would return home. And what he would do when he returned home is he would get a calf, a newborn calf, that he would be able to go in, put the calf on his shoulders, and he would do all of his daily exercise with the calf on the shoulders. And every day the calf got bigger, and every day that he kept doing the exercises, he was getting an increased load so that he was getting an increased load, an overload. And that's really what this overload principle is. And it's just basically the first page of our hymnals. And what it says is, strength gains occur as a result of systematic and progressive exercise of a sufficient frequency, intensity, and duration to cause adaptation. Really simple. It's one sentence. But if it was really simple, all the strength coaches in the world would always keep their jobs, because there wouldn't be some sexy new way of doing it, because you can manipulate frequency, intensity, and duration in a million, in billions, in an infinite number of different ways. So the reality is I can do, as long as I'm systematic and as long as I progress. Progressive means I increase either the weight or the volume of exercise. Systematic, I'm going to use a system, which means that I'm going to do the same exercises, or I'm going to use these exercises today, those exercises that day. So I've got a system that is kind of a written down thing. And then I'm going to progress. So I'm going to, as my muscle adapts, I'm going to give it a greater and greater challenge. And that progression has to be of sufficient frequency, how many times a week, intensity, how hard are you working, and duration, how long are you working, to cause adaptation. But this is like an equation. If we want a big increase in muscle, so a big increase in M, what we're going to do is so if I want to increase M so that I get more muscle, equals frequency. Oh, look at my gorgeous writing here. Intensity and duration, or time. Oh, look at that, it spells fit. Who would have guessed? All right, so if I want to increase my muscle, I can do it like an equation here. So if I don't have much time, and I'm going to make this into a small t, where I can't do much, what I have to do is I have to either increase my intensity or my frequency to make up for the decrease in time. If I want to do it, if I really love to go to the gym and I want to train every day, that frequency is really high, I have to decrease the intensity or the duration of my workouts. So just manipulating these things is all we're doing when we're training for strength. And you'll see later, it's the same thing for training for endurance. We just manipulate the frequency, intensity, and duration differently.